Works for me.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Let me write that down. Great. Okay, Carrie, I am ready when you are.
Ready to go. Clearing the screen out.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Boston City Council's Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. We are having our hearing on a number of different dockets, which I will read into the record shortly. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Michelle Wu. I'm chair of this committee. I'm joined by colleagues, councilors Kenzie Bach, Liz Brayton, and Ed Flynn. And we will also be hearing from many colleagues from the administration as well, and nominees to various posts that require council confirmation. Today's hearing is a public hearing being broadcast and recorded on the City of Boston website, streaming now, and will be later rebroadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, and Verizon 1964. We will take public testimony throughout the hearing, and so if you are interested in testifying, please email. I'll help you 1 second. Please email juan.lopez@boston.gov for the link and follow along on the live stream to know when it's your turn to speak. And if you are testifying, please state your name and affiliation, residence, and limit your comments to 2 minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard. Okay, so please bear with me as I'm going to just read into the record all of the dockets that are up for discussion this morning. The first is docket number 0741, reappointment of Joel Pierce as a member of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2021. And just a note that this item actually has been withdrawn, but because it was noticed, I did want to make a note of that. Docket number 0742, reappointment of P.T. Weinberg as a member of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0743, appointment of Justine Orlando as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2022. Docket number 0918, reappointment of Diana Parkan as an alternate member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2023. Docket number 0919, reappointment of David Baraducci as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2023. Docket number 0920, reappointment of John Amadeo as an alternate member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2021. Docket number 0921, reappointment of Felicia Jakes as a member of the Boston Landmarks Commission for a term expiring June 30th, 2023. Docket number 0738, reappointment of Nelson Arroyo as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2022. Docket number 0739, reappointment of Jane Cooper Brayton as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2022. They're right down there. Docket number 0740, reappointment of Drew Leff as a member of the Zoning Commission for a term ending May 1st, 2021. Docket number 0866, appointment of Myra Negron Roche to the Board of Directors of the Boston Industrial Development Finance Authority for a term expiring April 1st, 2024. And last but not least, docket number 0867, appointment of W.E. David Halbert to the Board of Directors of the Boston Industrial Development Finance Authority for a term expiring April 1st, 2025. These matters were sponsored by the mayor and referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation in batches on 3 separate dates, dating from June 30th, 2020 to July 29th, 2020, and August 19th, 2020. Okay, great. I think we have gotten through all of our necessary business at the beginning. So I'll hand it over to my colleagues just for quick opening statements if they wish, and then we'll go into the order as Fernando has requested, BIDFA, landmarks, and zoning. Councilor Kenzie Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll set the precedent of making this brief. Really just grateful for the service of everyone who serves on these important boards and commissions, and excited to hear from many of you, many of whom really have been doing this work in our community in these roles or others for a long time. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Brayton.
I'm going to keep it equally brief. I really appreciate all the work that these folks have been doing on these boards and commissions for many years, and I look forward to hearing more about the work and continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brayton. And Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Wu, and thank you to my colleagues, but I especially want to say thank you to the people that are being nominated. I see them working in the city every day, always giving back, trying to make our neighborhoods better and stronger, and to the real unsung heroes of our city is our residents that do so much without any notoriety. So I want to thank them. And just over the last several weeks, I was working with Myra Negron Roach on a project, and I was working with David Halbert on a project. And they're always giving back to making Boston a better city. So I just want to say thank you to all of the people that are being nominated here. Thank you, Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Okay, let's dive right in. So we'll start with BIDFA. Bill Nickerson, would you do us the honor of briefly introducing, oh, hold on, sorry, pause 1 second. I see Councillor Edwards needs to be added to the room. Okay. Okay, welcome, Councillor Edwards. We just did really quick opening statements from colleagues. Would you like to add anything?
Yes, because I won't be able to stay the entire time, but I did want to, I got all of the resumes, especially for the Zoning Commission members that are up today and the Landmark Commission members. And some of the thoughts and questions I have about is perspective, right? We went through the ZBA. We specifically were trying to find more renters, more folks who have a civil rights perspective when it comes to zoning. Before you will be coming the amendment for affirmatively furthering fair housing to make sure that we are zoning with equity. And so I am particularly interested in your perspectives on how zoning is not just about the numbers, not just about the buildings, but literally how it can cause injury or how it can cause healing in a city. And if you don't have those perspectives, that's a concern for me. If you don't believe that, that's a concern for me. And I don't think you should be on the Zoning Commission. I think that the understanding of the history of the zoning and the intentionality and the racism that has come from the city of Boston's and its zoning and planning, whether it was raising a community where it chose to put highways, who it chose to have the burden of pollution, those are intentional decisions. And it's important that you understand that. And I want you to speak to that understanding or lack thereof. And I don't think that in this day and age, in 2020, when we are assessing everything that we do differently because of the pandemic that we're in, that exasperated the disparities that we already have, that anybody can escape that perspective or that homework or that burden to look at how they are or are not contributing to equity in this community, including members of the Zoning Commission, including members of the Boston Landmarks Commission, and any other commission or person up today. So that's a perspective I'm very interested in. I will be basing my support on whether you have that perspective or are open to it. And and also your historical knowledge of how zoning has been part of an injury in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. And we'll make sure that that question is asked as we get to those nominees as well. Thank you. Okay, Bill, sorry again, could you please introduce the role of BIDFA in general and introduce I think it's two folks, Myra and David, who are here today as nominees.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor. First, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee, Chairperson Wu, Vice Chair Flynn, and the rest of the committee members in these crazy times. We're taking time out of your day to do this. It's so complicated. I'm very pleased also to announce these two dynamic candidates who are here for your consideration as new members of BIDFA. BIDFA is overseen by a board made up of 5 Boston residents who have experience in real estate, finance, and government. And what BIDFA does, its function is it's an authority of the city of Boston that serves as a conduit issuer of tax-exempt bonds to finance capital needs for Boston's nonprofits and some qualified manufacturers. Generally these days it's nonprofits. These tax-exempt bonds facilitate projects that would otherwise not cash flow because there's a lower interest rate offered on the bonds because the interest is not taxable to the purchaser of the bond. And that's what provides for the lower interest rate that allows a project, when you're talking 20, 30, $40 million projects, that is a substantial difference in cash flow if it's 1.5 points less in interest rate. Since 1972, Bidford has been the conduit issue of $572 million in bonds, created and retained at our estimates over 20,000 jobs. I should point out that it's not the credit of the city of Boston, the state, or the federal government. It's the credit of the individual borrower that facilitates the loan. And also, when we talk about tax exempt, we're talking federal taxes and some state taxes. This has no impact on tax revenue to the city of Boston. Of course, the borrowers are 501c3s, but most of them are pilot agreements, but as opposed to regular property taxes. But this has no impact on the Boston tax base at all. It's really the federal level that it's important. We also are in the process of rolling out a new tax-exempt lease product that will provide a self-liquidating lease for the installation of performance-based energy projects that pay for themselves through energy savings. I think our board thinks that both this new product and what we may be able to do to support the institutional community in Boston could be very important as we try to recover out of COVID. The tax-exempt lease is mainly for energy upgrades. There's a lot of these institutions are going to have to look at upgrading their HVAC systems to deal with the changes. There's a lot of institutions that may need to purchase additional space due to the changing environment we're in, et cetera, where the BIDFA can provide that sort of financing. Before I introduce the two prospective board members, does anybody have any questions? Please.
I think we're good, Bill.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I'd like to introduce Myra Negron-Roach. Myra is the Chief Operating Officer at IBA Community Development Corporation in the South End, and she manages the day-to-day operation of this $5.5 million housing organization. But it sounds like she didn't need any introduction from me. Go ahead, Myra.
Good morning, City Councilor. As Bill mentioned, and thank you for the opportunity to serve in BIDFA. My name is Mayra Negron Roche. I am the Chief Operating Officer of IVA, Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, which is the larger Latino-led organization in the city of Boston. We have 667 affordable housing units, among with 5 programs from a preschool program, a bilingual preschool program, youth program, resident services program, financial empowerment, and arts programming. Since I started working at IVA 20 years ago in 2000, I started in the finance department and gradually took roles with increasing responsibilities, growing as a chief operating officer, the chief financial officer, chief of finance and administration, and then the current role that I have as a chief operating officer since 2013. As the CEO of IVA, I oversee all the administrative function of the organization, including property management, asset management, real estate development, and financing. I also, in my free time, I do real estate investment. I have multifamily property in Boston, properties in Puerto Rico, and also in Tampa. When I was approached to join BIDFA, many thoughts came to my mind, including, should I do it? Should I not do it? But I said, at the end of the day, I must do this. Si se puede, we can do this. I am very excited to join BIDFA and continue with the city agenda to promote economic growth and employment of the city of Boston, and also the impact that the city businesses can gain to these programs that Bill just described. I am here if you have any questions for me. I'm also ready and embrace this opportunity to work along my side with professional experts like Bill, the Executive Director of BITFA, and also the staff member, Grisela, and the rest of the board, Kathleen, Gerardo, Sami, and hopefully you confirm today, Davey and I. Thank you so much for your time, and back to you.
Thank you, Myra. I think, Bill, if we could, I don't know if you would like to introduce David. We all know David as well, but let's have both of the nominees give a statement, and then we councilors likely have questions that apply to both.
Okay, David, I'll just give it over to you then.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. Madam Chair, it's wonderful to see you and to see your helpers as well. And I'm glad to know I'm not the only one in these interesting COVID days. Councilors and committee members, thank you so much for having me. Councilor, as you said, I've had the chance and the occasion to know and work with many of you on many projects across the city. But for those who aren't aware and watching, my name is David Halbert, and my day job, I serve as the outreach manager for the Educational Justice Institute at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where we focus on the expansion of post-secondary educational opportunities for individuals who are incarcerated and in the reentry process. And when I'm not at MIT's campus, which these days is pretty much every day, I spend my time operating in the community. I was a longtime resident of East Boston, where I joined a number of different community-based organizations, many of whom I'm still connected with, most prominently for this conversation, East Boston Main Streets, where I'm the longest serving member of the board there, focusing on economic development, economic empowerment in our particular area in East Boston, stretching. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
You're cutting out a little, David. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry. Too many people on the internet at the house today. The joys of at-home learning for BPS students, I guess. As I was saying, I'm a longtime member of East Boston Main Streets, and it was in looking at the work that's happened in East Boston that really brought me to BIDFA. Now, Dorchester, right on the Dorchester-Mattapan, specifically on the zoning committee for GMNC, and seeing on both sides of the harbor and all across the city so much of the impact that was happening pre-pandemic, and now because of the economic impact, the economic devastation that we've seen relative to the pandemic, understanding even more the need for access to capital, access to financing for the kind of projects that will sustain our community, sustain our city, and continue to allow it to grow. It's really important in that way. And to go back to what's happening in East Boston, what really spoke to me in terms of BIDFA and its role, and I remember looking at the website and seeing the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center and how the new building there in Maverick Square was partially financed through BIDFA funding, and understanding, as not just a former resident of East Boston, but also as a consumer, as a customer, getting my family's medical health care at the health center, and understanding what a critical, important venue it was for the community, both in terms of our public health, but also in terms of lifting up the community, providing economic opportunities, job opportunities, really revitalizing and helping to continue the dynamism of a growing community in East Boston, specifically in the Jeffreys Point area. Because you can link that to the funding that was received from BIDFA, you can see the real world impact in terms of economic development and in terms of raised very important points, other hearings that are on the docket today, about the fact that we need to take these kind of considerations to that double bottom line notion of not just fiscal benefit for the city of its residents, but also social benefit and social capital for the city and its residents into consideration as we're thinking about public money is how they're spent through public policy and the kind of development that happens. So I look forward to the remainder of this conversation, hoping that my internet holds up, and thank you so much for taking the time and allowing me to be here.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll do questions from counselors, and I will set a timer and see how it goes, just because there's so many folks we have to get through, but I won't be harsh about cutting people off, because I think it's really necessary to use our role to ensure that we are fully engaging with all of these wonderful folks who are volunteering their time. Okay, so starting with Councillor Bach.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to express my excitement about both these candidates. Back before I was a city councilor, Myra and I were actually on a CAC together for the Back Bay Station project. And she just brought, a relentless focus on affordable housing and community to that project. And I think especially for something like BIDFA, what we need are people who are totally tied into community and imaginative and creative, and also practical, pragmatic, and thinking about how do we make these dollars and cents instruments really work on behalf of our community organizations. And I'm really confident from that work with Myra and following her career, and then all the things that I've gotten to follow about the important work that David does, that you're both bringing that right synergy to this. So I'm glad to have you both here today. I guess a question that I have might be a piece of it for Bill Nickerson and then a piece of it for each of you. One sort of brass tacks question, Mr. Nickerson, for you is just when we talk about that, the 550 or 60 million that BIDFA has done, and I'm sort of interested in what constrains the amount of this activity that BIDFA can support. So I came from sort of on the affordable housing world, the 4% and the volume caps and the state, portfolio. And I'm curious whether we operate under a limit like that in this space where there's a certain amount of activity BIDFA can support each year, or whether there's the possibility to really grow that pipeline with better information and more proactive partnership with organizations. So if you could speak to that a little bit, and then I have a follow-up question for the candidates.
Thank you, Councillor. That's actually a great question. That actually lets me get on my soapbox a little bit, because one of the things that restrains the projects that we do is that on 501c3 bonds, we have to compete with mass development, who's the big player. Obviously, the size of their staff and outreach. And so we don't get that many projects in the city. If we got more projects, and of course the Boston jobs policy attaches to our bonds. So anybody in the community, especially councilors, and if you know of a 501c3 that's looking to build a new facility, improve a facility, and make major equipment purchases, please give us the opportunity to talk to them and see if we could provide that financing. Now, beyond that, the limitations are, you mentioned housing. We're not authorized. We're governed by Chapter 40D of Mass General Law. We're not authorized under that to do housing. And the federal regulations are very specific in how they guide what's actually eligible for tax-exempt bond financing. Specific 501c3s are pretty much broadly eligible. There's not a lot more limitations there. But we also have the ability to do manufacturing bonds. But the nature of it is it's a very antiquated definition of manufacturing in federal tax code. In fact, I'm part of a national finance group that's lobbying to get a change to that at the Congress to modernize the definition, which would put things right in Boston's wheelhouse. It would include things like research and development and intellectual property development that now it's a very 19th century definition of what manufacture is. There's also a $10 million maximum, and you couldn't do much of anything with that. So we haven't seen a manufacturing bond in a long time. But more than anything else, what restrains us is, and there's millions of dollars in financing to all the institutions coming in. It's primarily that mass development gets the majority of the business. But any outreach on anybody's part, especially in the councilors, I would love the opportunity to talk to the potential clients that are in your community, certainly. Thank you.
Got it. No, that's great to understand. And I think that, it makes sense to me that mass development as sort of like the 800-pound gorilla, it's tough to compete with for sort of some of our more savvy players. I just find myself thinking about the, projects and entities who never think about this bonding option at all, and how we could potentially, build relationships there to really increase the pipeline. And so my question for the candidates, and I promise, Madam Chair, it's my last comment, is just, is just sort of what most excites you about like potential in this role, you know, when you were asked to serve in this capacity, and especially in light of the situation we find ourselves in with COVID-19.
I can start, and thank you for your question. I would say what excites me the most is to provide opportunities to small businesses where sometimes they can be denied in, you know, they need capital need. They have capital needs, but sometimes it's more challenging for them to get those fundings. And also, I would say it's just I didn't know that the city of Boston has this platform for businesses. And I would say it's just to market this opportunity and what the city of Boston is offering that can others and also minority can gain access to. This opportunity is access and also helping businesses. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, Councillor, thank you so much. That's a great question. I think very similar to what Myra was saying. It's really expanding that option and that access to capital for undercapitalized groups. And I think when we think about that, the opportunity to think about that in a very broad-based way. So I think we often put that in terms of, you know, racial demographics, understandably, but also thinking about that in terms of women-led businesses, thinking about that in terms of businesses that are led by members of the LGBTQ community, veterans who are, you know, trying to get businesses up off the ground after returning from service, and expanding how we think about investment in the city from a business perspective. You know, of course, there's so much focus on downtown for obvious reasons. That is the economic engine that drives so much of the city, but that there is vibrancy and that there's economic vitality throughout the city and all 22 wards, and that we want to make sure that our capital is flowing and developing and building all of our communities. And that's the way that we become a stronger city. And so that's what excites me.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. Councillor Brayton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've learned a whole lot already. I'm curious about. I'm learning a lot about this. I didn't know very much about BITFA. That you're not authorized to do housing, but that you do manufacturing bonds. Can you give some examples of bonds that or funding that you've issued to manufacturing recently or fairly recently?
Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the restraints that are on the manufacturing bond, we have not been able. I've been in the program 25 years, and it's been at least a dozen years probably. I remember the last one we were trying to do that didn't come together, and that was probably 10 years ago. The restraints on deal size at $10 million, that's a federal restraint under the federal tax code. And the arcane or archaic description of what a manufacturer is doesn't really leave for a lot of opportunity for what is now a manufacturer in Boston. Historically, we've done places like the Katarubis Brothers facility in Newmarket. They actually a while ago, they had to move to a bigger facility, but it didn't turn out that we were involved in that financing. Traditionally, a lot of places like Winthrop Printing, when they were in South Boston, Dorchester, on the line there, Acme Bookbinding in Charlestown. There used to be quite a bit of this activity. It's just that the regulations surrounding the manufacturing bonds really hasn't kept up with changing dollar dynamics and realities and realities and what is sort of like a high, the type of manufacturing we could have, real high value manufacturing. It's still based on making widgets. And so it just really doesn't fit what goes on in Boston these days. I mean, there's quite a few over the years throughout the city of manufacturers that were, in the old days, were financed with tax exempt bonds, but now it's primarily 501c3s.
Yeah. I think the cost of real estate and gentrification across the city, but I see it a lot of it out here in Alston, Brayton, is that we're displacing small businesses, and we're developing formerly light industrially zoned areas to become residential. So I think we're squeezing the space for new small business who may be doing some developing prototypes, developing some, you know, like an industrial kitchen for entrepreneurs to work out of. We're just not leaving space in our communities for those sort of small. I'd say it's a certain niche market. So is that something that that your group would be interested in funding, like a maker space for entrepreneurs, or would that be something that would be of interest?
I've looked at that. I mean, I'm good friends with, for example, Jen Fagel, who runs the kitchens that are over on Quincy Street and stuff. We've talked over the years. Unfortunately, the limitations on the 501c3 requirement, but if the tenants aren't 501c3s, then you couldn't do it. So there are layers there, but really what you're speaking to is the sister program of BIDFA, which is the Boston Local Development Corporation, which I always also have the pleasure of being the general manager of. And we make small business loans. And in fact, we were just given, the federal government under the CARES Act gave us a grant of $630,000 for COVID recovery loans. And that space that you're talking about, light industrial, et cetera, that's where the Boston Local Development Corporation could help facilitate a project, either with standalone financing if it's not 100% bankable, or what we really like to do, which is to provide subordinated debt to get the bank to the table in a larger project. So that's where I think we'd have that opportunity to make that impact, and the program, you know, has for many years. There are a lot of limitations on the tax exempt bond side that narrow our opportunities.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brayton. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Councillor Wu, and I also want to say thank you to Bill for your strong leadership in this city for so many years as well. So thank you, Bill. I'd like to start with Myra and just ask her. You know, I've spent many years working in the South End community, especially at Villa Victoria, and I know they have an outstanding residential program, but they also include community college. They also include food access, youth programs, training programs, services for seniors. As a manager in that field for so many years, what have you learned that's the most important lesson that you have learned that could benefit the residents of Boston?
Thank you, Ed Flynn. So I will say that what I have learned is to provide access to the community. And that's why we have a wrap around services from the preschool program to the strong one, which is resident services. Back in 2017, Eva did the strategic planning process, and we were very intentionally in provide more support to our residents through resident services, through providing food access and quality food access, because it's not any type of food, you know, it's access to quality vegetable, fruits, and also assisting the residents where they at. So we consciously did the investment of resident services, and I would say it's just to empower the residents to meet them where they are and look to the north to see what would it take to move the residents forward. And as we move the residents forward, we move the city. So it's just kind of, it's doing little pieces. But I would say what I have learned more is just supporting the residents, creating the plan, and also connecting them with the services that they need to fulfill their dream. Did that answer your question? Thank you.
It certainly does. Thank you. And then my final question to David, and again, I had the opportunity to work closely with David on many issues, but you've really been a leader on reentry and people coming out of jail and prison, but you've also been a supporter of communities that have been left behind in trying to help build up communities and, with Main Street's programs, making sure that the benefits of the downtown are shared with all of the neighborhoods. Having said that, what is the most important lesson you have learned, David, in your professional and educational experience? You have a master's degree from Northeastern, but what's the most important quality that you will bring to this position?
Thank you so much for the question, Counselor. I think the most important lesson I've learned and what I hope to bring is that representation is incredibly important in how we address and how we create public policy. And when I say representation, I think that's a very intentional use of the word as opposed to tokenism. And I think many of us on this conversation today have seen that and seen what that means. And by tokenism, what I mean is people who are being placed in the position to simply check a box that, we have one of those as part of this conversation. Whereas I think representation is about deeply and truly engaging with people, asking them to bring perspectives that are either absent from conversations or are underrepresented in those conversations to the table, along with a skill set that enables that conversation and those discussions to move forward in a constructive way. And when we're thinking about that and what that means, and to bring it back to your comments relative to reentry, it's understanding that it's not just about having a master's degree, as you mentioned that I have, that there are individuals who are bringing wisdom from our community from all walks of life, whether they have more or less formal education, whether they find themselves in secure job situations or looking, whether their housing situations find them as homeowners, renters, or those searching, that they all bring a different level of wisdom to the table. And so when we're having these conversations about the kind of policies that we develop and that we enact for our city and who they're going to help, making sure that we're being open and reaching a hand out to listen to those individuals, to bring their expertise to the table, to hear and to incorporate that into how we think about the policies, not just as they're being developed, but also in terms of how they're going to be implemented and who they're going to assist. So I think as long as we're being guided by that, we're more likely to make policies that are going to help folks, as you said, so eloquently, those individuals who have been left out of the conversation often, and those communities that have felt left out of the conversation, because that's how we enact the kind of policies, create the kind of city that I think we all want to live in.
Well, thank you to Myra, and thank you to David. And I know I'm supporting them, and they're outstanding candidates. And this is what Boston needs, these dedicated, hardworking officials that take their job seriously. So outstanding selections, and looking forward to working with all of you. So thank you, Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I want to recognize that Councilor Flaherty has joined us as well. And Councilor Flaherty, you'll be next after Councilor Edwards. Go ahead, Councilor Edwards. Oh, Councilor Edwards might have stepped away. Okay, Councilor Flaherty, you're up, and we'll loop in Councilor Edwards when she comes back.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see the baby there next to you. First, I just want to obviously go on record as thanking all of the applicants for their service and for their commitment to our city. They play a vital role in kind of keeping our city moving forward. And so for their time and efforts and their talents, particularly those that have committed and taking time out of their own personal or professional schedule to give back to the city. I commend that and look forward to continuing to work with them. So with respect to the Beacon Hill Architectural Commissions, I want to be on record of supporting the two reappointments. With respect to the Landmarks Commission, I want to support the new appointment and the reappointments. With respect to the Zoning Commission, would like to go on record of supporting the reappointments. And with respect to the Boston Industrial Development Finance BIDFA, I would like to support both applicants in their appointments, and in particular proud to support Dave Halbert's application, someone that I've gotten to know over the years and respect. I know my kids love Dave. but Dave will be bringing a level of life experience and community involvement, as well as legal acumen to a position and be well served. So I'm so proud to see him be appointed, and also to be expanding his commitment to our city. And so with that, happy to support all the applications and wish everyone well, and look forward to a continued partnership as we continue to move our city forward in what will be a post, at some point will be a post-pandemic world. And as we start to do things differently, and it's the people that are before us now that will be playing a big role in that as well. So thank you, Madam Chair, and look forward to supporting all the applicants.
Thank you, Councilor Flaherty. Okay, I just have two short questions, and then we'll circle back if anyone else has questions. So first, could both of the applicants or the nominees just describe, do you anticipate any conflicts of interest coming up, whether with your professional role or any other circumstances? And can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can start. I don't foresee any conflict of interest with the work that I do at EVA.
I'm sorry, Myra. Someone was yelling in my ear at that same time. Could you say one more time?
That's okay. And so what I was saying, that I don't foresee any conflict in the work that I do for EVA and also BITFA.
Thank you.
Councilor Wu, I don't see any conflict on a professional level, given the work that I do at MIT. And relative to community involvements, I will be leaning on the expertise of Bill and the team at BITFA, and of course, legal counsel for anything relative to East Boston and the greater Mattapan area, because of my involvement with the GMNC Zoning Committee and East Boston Main Streets, just to ensure that there are no conflict of interest in any matters that come before the board.
And Bill, could you just describe, last time we had nominees before the board, before the council for the BITFA board, there was a lot of conversation about new ways to revitalize BITFA's mission, and particularly around climate resiliency. Have any of those changes started to take place, or are you seeing a shift in any of the direction of the work since we had those conversations before the council?
Thank you, Councilor. I mentioned the tax exempt lease program that we're rolling out. That was a lot of what we were circling around at the time of those prior appointments. We were in the process, we've developed some outside relationships with people with more expertise in that space than us. An organization called Greener You, that we were putting together a campaign to go out to the end users at the institutions, universities primarily. And when COVID hit, it kind of put us on hold for a while as far as being able to do that outreach. And actually, we've just in the process of ramping up. We're planning some live webinars to do outreach to the universities and any other nonprofit. We're also made contacts throughout people who are sort of the point of sale people within the city, at the mayor's office, et cetera, to increase awareness that we will be out there with not only this product, but even back to our regular tax exempt bond product, because in response to COVID, there could be a lot of opportunities there. But specifically, you mentioned the energy related climate and energy, and that's right at the tax exempt lease program, because it's set up as a self-liquidating lease that the savings that you get basically pays the bill for the lease. And the motivating force for that is that when the facilities person goes to the CFO and says, we can save a lot of money if we do this installation, and the CFO says, but if your calculations are wrong, then we don't have any fat in the budget. This is self-liquidating because there's enough savings, and that savings is guaranteed by the energy service company that comes in. They do an investment grade audit, and so they stand up to that. It would have to, obviously, it's be large players like Johnson Controls or Train or somebody, but they would come in and then they would provide a guarantee, so they would make up a shortfall. And that's the real motivating factor to move this product. As I said, we were constrained quite a bit. The new board members, there has definitely, I used the term dynamism when introducing Myra and David. There's definitely been that in the new additions to the board that you recently approved, and with Kathy Coteritas now as chair, as a longtime member, in getting this outreach going and revitalizing the program. But a lot of our focus is going to be in the energy saving space and the climate space because of the tax exempt lease program.
Great, thank you very much. And yeah, just a note to the nominees that, you know, we very much hope that, as some of my other colleagues have asked, that the scope and the mission of BIDFA can expand and really be used as a tool to match the ongoing challenges that we're facing today, especially when it comes to climate and affordability and stabilizing our businesses here. Okay, are there any other questions from councilors? I know Councilor Bach had a second one that I think Councilor Brayton had asked, so second round from anyone? Okay, I'm not seeing any takers. So, okay, oh, and then I'll just ask now, because I see some folks in the room as well who might want to testify. Is there anyone here who is here to speak on behalf of or against one of these two nominees from the public? No. Okay, great. Well, thank you to all three of you, Bill, Myra, and David, and we really, really appreciate your time. We will shift next to the Landmarks Commission. And Roseanne, I'll hand it over to you if you could, I think, okay, so let's see. I see Justine here. I know we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nominations or reappointments here. But is Justine the only nominee here from Landmarks?
I believe David Berardici is here as well, Madam
Chair.
Chair.
I see David. Okay, sorry, I'm searching the boxes. Hello. Okay, great. Roseanne, same thing. Could you please just introduce the commission in general and then introduce the nominees to us, please?
Certainly. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Roseanne Foley, for those who don't know, and I am the Director of Historic Preservation for the City of Boston. And our Boston Landmarks Commission oversees 9 district commissions, but we have just Beacon Hill and Landmarks here today. Hopefully we'll have other reappointments so that we can come back and talk more about the great work we do. For Beacon Hill, that district has been in place since 1955 and is one of the oldest in the country. And that commission does great work, overseeing changes to Beacon Hill and keeping it at a level of a world-class tourist destination, as well as a great neighborhood for residents. Would you like me to go through the dockets, or how do you want me to do that, Madam Chair?
Maybe just for because we will hope to take up all of the dockets, even the folks who were not able to join us. Maybe if you could just briefly review the 3 who were not able to be here, briefly is fine, and then introduce the nominees to speak would be great.
Okay, so on the first docket is P.T. Weinberg, who's getting reappointed, hopefully, to the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission. He's been in the real estate business since 1999. He's the founder of Charles Gate Realty Group and Charles Gate Property Management. He has a BA from Boston College and an MBA from Babson. He's a member of the Greater Boston, Massachusetts, and National Association of Realtors. So that's PT. And next, I believe, is Justine Orlando, who I am really excited to welcome as a new appointee. And she can speak for herself, but she has already attended hearings, before COVID hit us. So I think she's just as excited as we are to welcome her. So I'll let her speak.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Justine Orlando. I'm a senior project manager at Halbert Design and Construction here in Boston. Prior to that, I was with a local masonry company where I did multiple projects throughout the city and Massachusetts for historic preservation. I'm extremely excited to join Boston Landmarks Commission. I'm very, very passionate about this piece of our history, as well as what I do on a day-to-day at Halbert. Have always really been engaged with the technical side of preservation, construction means and methods, and design. I have grown to really find quite a bit of interest in the blending of the art of preservation and new use for buildings that we've started to also see here in the city. I'm excited to hopefully be a part of that as well. And lastly, the other piece of passion I have for this is trying to bring more of younger generations into the love of preservation the way that I have. I think that's something that we also need to focus on as well, just to keep the momentum going. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Justine. Next up is Diana Parkan, who's being reappointed to the Boston Landmarks Commission. She's, sorry she can't be here today, obviously. She's also serving on the South End District Commission and is taking on the role of study committee chair for the Highland Park Architectural Conservation District. That is right now in progress. So he's wearing a lot of hats. Diana is Director of Capital Improvements and Facility Operations for the Museum of African American History. And she has also taken on the considerable task of managing the preservation, maintenance, and protection of the museum's 4 historic sites in Boston and Nantucket. She successfully completed the restoration of the Museum of African American History's 205-year-old African Meeting House located in historic Beacon Hill. She also worked for over 20 years managing large capital projects for the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority. She received her BA from Emmanuel College and a master's in historic preservation at BU. Next up is David Baraducci. We're happy he is on the docket to be reappointed to the Boston Landmarks Commission. He's chair of our Design Review Committee and also chairs the 4 Point Channel Historic District Commission. So I'll let him speak for his experience and interests.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am one of the 2 representatives from the Boston Society of Landscape Architects. And I think that's one of the more important pieces that I think I bring to the commission, and that is having the perspective of urban design and the site as it relates to any landmark building or landmark parcel. I've been on the commission since I was trying to remember this, I think it was 2001. I was originally elected to the commission, and much to my surprise, I didn't have any idea that I would be on it this long, and I'm happy that I am. And then I was one of the more interesting roles I have on the commission is to be chair of the design review committee, which I think is an important piece, because that is where we really get involved in helping to shape the city in terms of the giving our design input to a lot of the applications that come before us. And I enjoy that. And then the biggest accomplishment that I feel or the biggest contribution was to be chair of the study committee that was formed to develop the guidelines for the development of the guidelines for development for the Fort Point Channel Landmark District Commission. That was a committee that we met for almost 2 years to develop these guidelines, and then that obviously resulted in having that district be accepted as a landmark district. And now my role then shifted to be chair of that commission. And with so much interest from, in terms of development in that district, it's been really rewarding to have a role in helping to shape that. And I think that's, I would hope that I could be reappointed to this position. It's something that interests me very much, and I believe I still have a lot of to give to it. And just a little bit of me for my background. I am a landscape architect, obviously. I have my own firm and have had my own firm for, I think, since 1996, sorry. It's David Verducci Landscape Architecture, and my office is located on Brownfield Street in downtown. So that's, I think, is what I will offer from my background, and I hope that you would consider me for this for the nomination, for renomination.
Roseanne, did you want to mention John or Felicia?
Yes, I have some comments about John Amadeo as well. He is the other Boston Society of Landscape Architects nominee. He's also chair of the South End Historic District Commission. He's been on the Landmarks Commission since, I think, 1996, and has been heavily involved in the Boston preservation community. He's principal at CRJA IBI Group and has over 35 years of landscape architecture experience. They have a particular emphasis on sustainable development, and he is a longtime resident of Dorchester. And last but not least, Felicia sends regrets about having to miss this important meeting, and sent a little bit of a statement to the Boston City Council Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. I would like to convey my humble and grateful appreciation to the chair and committee for considering my reappointment to the Boston Landmarks Commission. I am honored to continue to serve the city of Boston in this capacity. With deepest regards, Felicia Jacques. And she has been the Vice President, Director of Real Estate Development for Maloney Properties, and has more than 18 years of experience in real estate development and project leadership. And some of you may know she's also the chair of the Community Preservation Committee for the City of Boston.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from colleagues, starting with Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the nominees. I want to note that P.T. Weinberg, who is not with us but is up for renomination for the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission, is also the relatively new chair of the commission, and so grateful for his leadership on that front. In addition,
thank you.
Serving on the commission, but really leading it at this point, and it's a really important part of our neighborhood community here in Beacon Hill. So grateful to him for that. And for the landmarks folks who are here, I guess, and I should say, I just finished writing a lot of letters addressed to Felicia for the Community Preservation Act front, and grateful to her service on that. And obviously her service as the chair of that committee is through her service on the Landmarks Commission, because she holds the seat that the commission has sort of statutorily on the CPC. But so grateful for that. I wanted to ask the candidates who are here, I actually submitted a letter to the Landmarks Commission hearing a few days ago that was on a particular matter, but one of the things I expressed, and that I've expressed pretty much in every venue that Landmarks comes up, is my desire and interest in giving the commission sort of more updated tools to pursue sort of more community level history, and also to sort of put the historic preservation lens earlier on in our development process. Because I think that in a lot of ways, Article 85, what we have right now, demo delay, hits at the very end of a process so far downstream that, you really are talking about blocking, and frankly, rarely are you effectively blocking something, and you're sort of blocking or just delaying. And I think it causes frustration for preservationists and developers alike without actually achieving what we're trying to achieve, which is the preservation of more of Boston's, beautiful historic building infrastructure. So I guess I wonder, my soapbox is that we need that change that I know the commission supports in its enabling language at the state level, so that we can protect community landmarks and they don't have to just have state or national significance. And that on the Article 85 side, we should really be rethinking and reforming that whole process to bring historic preservation further forward. And so I would be remiss not to ask nominees and nominees for reappointment sort of what you think about that agenda, and what kind of tools, based on your service or observation of the commission, you think that the commission most needs to pursue its work even more effectively.
I guess that would be directed at me. Yeah, I think if I'm understanding what the question was, you spoke about demolition delay, and that is something that comes before us all the time. And sometimes it is frustrating because it comes, like, as you said, so late in the process, that it's often viewed as being sort of almost obstructionist. And I think that what would be best there would be to have that process be brought to the community that is most involved and would be most impacted by that development. Because what demolition delay often achieves, and I've seen this, and it has been very successful, it sort of puts the brakes on a project for just a bit, and allows the opportunity for that community to have a better dialogue with the developer and to see if there's some compromise that can be achieved, particularly when that community has some objections to what the development is going to be. And I have seen where that has been extremely successful. They have figured something out and come up with a solution that benefits both. So it's a valuable tool that we have. So yes, I think the more involvement that the local community gets when they are going to be impacted by development at the earlier stage, the better.
Great, thanks. And Justine, I know obviously this is an appointment, not a reappointment, but it sounds like you've been paying pretty close attention to the commission even prior to serving on it. So just any thoughts you have on this?
I would completely agree with what David was saying, and bringing the conversation as early as possible. Kind of going through that process on the contractor side during design development and pre-construction. Any opportunity to get that conversation on the table as early as possible. There's just so many more ways that those compromises can get worked into projects. While folks are more willing to hear it as well and work through that, it really puts those different concerns in a much different light the earlier they can be presented and discussed, and then hopefully executed on.
Great, thanks. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there's probably both informal and formal ways in which we could do more to move that process further up in the further upstream. So just would love your partnership on that front. Madam Chair, I think those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Bach. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Councillor Wu, and thank you to Roseanne for your work for many years on these important issues. And I know the Landmarks Commission, many of them are located in my district and District 2, including the Back Bay, Bay Village, Beacon Hill, as we're talking about, Fort Point, St. Botolph, and the South End. A lot of them I also overlap, obviously, with Councilor Bach as well. But just want to say thank you to Roseanne for her work for many years. So I know David has been doing this for a while, and he has an outstanding record and outstanding reputation. So I'm glad to support David and to support Justine and the others as well. My question to either David or Justine, how can we get younger people? I know Justine talked about it a little bit, but how can we get younger people that may not be from Boston, but they're living here now and they're professionals working in Boston? How can we get them more involved in appreciating the historic significance of many of our buildings, of our districts, and what is our message to young people about why is it important to have historic districts protecting the history of of many buildings in our neighborhoods?
Well, I'll take that. It's all about outreach, and the more it is known to the residents of Boston that a Landmarks Commission, first of all, exists, and what it is that we do is key. And I know that unfortunately with COVID, we were not able to do it this past year, but every spring we have a preservation month that the commission organizes quite well. And there's a lot of things that the public can get involved with that will educate them as to what we do. And a lot of it has to do with tours through districts, tours through actually landmark buildings and all kinds of different programs. So that's key. And I think continuing that kind of thing is important. And I think the message should be going out there is what interests me most about Boston, and that is obviously Boston has a very rich legacy of historic structures and history. And I think the thing that makes Boston so unique is that we respect that heritage, but at the same time, we don't smother development. And I think the eye that I like to bring to, the point of view I like to bring to the commission is to see how we can encourage development, but at the same time, respect our history, so that it's the blend of those two things that makes Boston so unique and more unique than other cities, I think. And I think Fort Point Channel is a perfect example of how we've done that. It's not the commission and the landmarking of that district was not to put a glass bubble over it and to say, nothing can be touched here. The guidelines allow for all kinds of change and development to occur sensitively and to maintain those character defining features that were beloved in that district and that made that district significant, but yet allow for that kind of change that has to happen as a city grows and uses and demographics and shifts, and there's a need for that kind of change. So it's basically outreach as much as possible, I think, is how to educate people.
Well, thank you, David. And Justine, would you like to weigh in on that?
Sure. I would absolutely agree with David. Really, when it comes to the blending of historic preservation and bringing in new use, I think especially for the younger generation, that is something that is so practical and real that they can really appreciate. And that is something that I think is something that we can do and we can continue to do and grow and bring that into the outreach as well. have done a lot of work with the Boston Preservation Alliance, specifically the Young Advisors Group. And we have had a tremendous amount of new members join and really start to develop that same love for preservation. As David mentioned, there's been a lot of outreach, in that group in particular, but in others as well, with different tours and walks, but also some very fun and almost edgy events that really bring preservation to the forefront. And these are things that are different outreach and different events that could also happen at a much larger scale as well, to bring preservation to younger generations. Part of the messaging too, I think, is that a lot to do with preservation tends to go more on the stoppage of work and progress, and halting of that. I think we can really work to help change that message for younger generations, and all of the things that we're doing versus what preservation needs might be stopping. If that makes sense.
It does, and I just want to say thank you to both of you and to Roseanne. And I guess my final comment, I know myself and Councilor Bach, as I mentioned earlier, we represent, both of us represent Beacon Hill, and we're both proud to represent the Museum of African American History. And I always say to Councilor Bach that it's in my district, and she always says it's in her district. So that's our big argument that we have. But we're proud to both represent it. And I just guess my final question is maybe Roseanne or David. I don't need to have an answer now, but do you think at some time, we can get more kids from the South End or South Boston or Chinatown to visit the museum? I know it's a historic gem, but is there an opportunity for us to get some young BPS kids, students, after the pandemic is over? Maybe we could try to arrange a tour for some of the students. They only live a mile away from there, but they probably have never been there. But maybe we can talk offline, or if you want to respond briefly, just want to see what your thoughts might be.
I think that's a fantastic idea. We also oversee the archaeology program, which in less plague-ridden times hosts a number of classes. And I think that's a wonderful idea to try to work out a partnership with BPS to come to our cultural institutions like the Old State House as well, which is a landmark. And, we can have a conversation with Diana to see how that would work.
Yeah, thank you, Roseanne. That would be great. And the reason I ask it is I worked with Boston Harbor now and a couple of other groups, but a lot of my constituents in Chinatown and the South End, African American and Chinese Americans, they've never been to the Harbor Islands. So I always work with groups that can help them, but that's why I bring it up. I just want to expose some of the young people in Beacon Hill or Chinatown in South End to some of these gems that we have in Boston. So again, thank you to Roseanne. Thank you to Dave, to Justine. I look forward to supporting everybody when the vote is taken. So thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. I believe Councilor Edwards had said she was holding questions until potentially the zoning portion, but I'll pause in case she wanted to jump in here. Oh, okay, we'll keep going. I just have the same question as for the BIDFA folks. Do you anticipate any conflicts of interest, just for disclosure now?
For me, I would say that it could potentially come up if there's a project being brought in front of the commission that the company I work for may also be proposing on? And if so, I'll work with Roseanne Foley to take the appropriate steps
We have,
in that case.
yeah, a recusal is something that we can do pretty easily. So we can. No, it's a small town, Boston. So,
Right.
you know.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I think there was, when I think back, I think I only had to recuse myself really just once on the commission, and that was because one of the projects or the applicants that came before the commission was a project I was the landscape architect for. So obviously I recused myself on all of the hearings that we had for that. But certainly, you know, I always look to see if the applicant is someone that I am currently working with in some capacity, and if that's the case, then I definitely recuse myself. But that's really, for me, the only conflict of interest that I see, that I watch for.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Unless others have a second round of questions, I think we are great. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us. Look forward to acting on these, and feel free to stay if you wish or go about your very busy days, I'm sure.
Okay.
And then we will transition to zoning.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so Brian, I think we would hand it to you. Brian Glasscock will give an overview, and then according to my notes, I see Drew. Is Drew still here? Okay, yes, Drew is here. And Jane, and I think we're missing Jane. So Brian, if you could again give an overview of the zoning commission's work, and then introduce, maybe say a brief statement about Jane, since she could not be here, and then introduce Drew would be great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. And if I could, I just want to say two quick things about a couple of the folks that you just were viewing. I've known, I was Commissioner of Environment Department for many years and worked very closely with David Berducci and Diana Parkan, and they're two of the most thoughtful people you're going to find, really selfless servants, and which can be a really challenging thing. But they also have the benefit of being genuine subject matter experts. And so on a personal note, I would wholeheartedly recommend trying to keep them on board, because they're just terrific. But let me talk a little bit about the Zoning Commission. Zoning Commission is probably a lot less well known than the Zoning Board of Appeal, which you folks deal with on a regular basis. The Zoning Commission's authority stems from the enabling legislation, the state enabling legislation, Chapter 665 of the Acts of 1956, which authorizes the city of Boston to develop zoning and land use regulations. The Zoning Commission is the body that reviews and approves those regulations that has resulted in our zoning code. It also is able to authorize certain zoning tools, such as the planned development area, which essentially acts as a zoning overlay for a specific development site, where the site's over 1 acre in size, and where there's an opportunity to leverage greater public benefits by being more flexible on what's allowed there. And then Zoning Commission also does approve the inclusionary development changes to inclusionary development policy that produces the affordable housing. Much of the affordable housing that's built by the private sector in Boston. So those are the sort of three main roles. And I think like so many of the boards and commissions that the city has, the enabling legislation prescribes who can sit on, who gets nominated to those boards. Some of the seats are specified to be coming from nominees of particular interest, whether it's the unions, neighborhood associations, Chamber of Commerce, and then there are usually some at-large seats which are nominated by by the mayor. And I think, you know, I'll start with Nelson Arroyo. Nelson's a very thoughtful, very passionate member, one of the mayor's selection. He's lives in Jamaica Plain. He survived, if anyone was around 10 or 12 years ago, the rectory, redevelopment of the rectory and the community process there. He was Nelson was the head of the Jamaica Plain Neighborhood Council, JP being one of the most diverse neighborhoods in the city. There was a long, hard battle with developers in the city and the community, but resulted in a terrific project which preserved the rectory there. And Nelson was right in the heat of it. He asked very thoughtful questions in the zoning commission hearings. It brings that sort of neighborhood activist bit of skepticism towards everything that comes in the door. Asked some tough questions, and he's been a pleasure to work with. Real stalwart on the commission. Jane Brayton, similarly, Jane's a very well regarded artist, and comes as a representative neighborhood association. She's our vice chair. She's got a certain way about her that when she asks questions of developers or of staff, you feel like you really better have the right answer. She's a tough taskmaster when it comes to that, and she doesn't tolerate any obfuscation or anybody trying to hide the ball. And also a stalwart. These hearings can drag on sometimes, and the zoning code is probably, Boston zoning code, probably one of the most complex ones in the country, at 3,500 pages and 90 articles. It takes a certain discipline to be able to sort through this stuff and parse through it. And then finally, Drew Leff, a nominee of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, professional in the development consulting world for more than 45 years. Very, very impressive record now with Stantec. It helps having a range of perspectives and a range of level of types of expertise, because as I said, this is what the zoning commission does is generally highly technical, as opposed to the more grassroots components of the aspects of the zoning board of appeal. This is pretty complex stuff, and it really helps to be able to have people on with that kind of technical and practical expertise in the development world, to have a sense of what's possible. Are we moving in the right direction? And I think to sort of round out that group, it does help having people from that direction. And that, again, that's part of the zoning enabling legislation that requires representatives from a broad range of groups. And so that's the slate that we bring forward today.
Thank you very much. Drew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly, Councilor Wu, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Drew Leff. As Brian said, I have over 45 years of broad experience in development, planning and managing development projects. I believe I bridge both the public and private sectors. I worked as a developer, both for major development companies and for my own account. But I also do a lot of work, and I would say probably most of my work is for government agencies at the moment. Probably about, I lead Stantec's real estate strategies group. Stantec is primarily a design firm, a very large international design firm with architects and planners and engineers of all sorts. I'm kind of the oddball. We have a small group that provides real estate strategies and advice and helps our clients understand, particularly public agencies, understand the how development works. You know, we're kind of the inside stand-in for developers often in the in that kind of planning process. What is possible at the same time? Over the years, I have a big part of my work has been working with community groups to understand their needs, help them understand what will work or not work for development, and use the private sector to achieve public objectives and goals and initiatives. I've worked for here in I would say probably about 60% of my work is national, both U.S. and Canada. But a very significant amount of work is still in Massachusetts and in the Boston area. Work for probably all the state's real estate agencies, whether it's MassDOT or DCAM or Mass Development, folks like that. Many cities and towns as well. And also, I live in the Leather District, 112 Beach Street. Been active in my community, been there for about 13 years now. Been serving on an IAG until recently, where we had a conflict because Stantec ended up, they changed architects, and so I'm recused myself from that as we talk about conflict issues. I've been on numerous boards in Boston area. Primarily, it was interesting to hear the Landmarks Commission folks, nominees talk because I've been on the boards of the Boston Preservation Alliance, Historic Boston, Inc., and am the Massachusetts advisor to the National Trust. So that's something, and I really appreciated those remarks, because how do we have development that still is based upon the wonderful historic heritage that we have? It is, I work with zoning on a regular basis. As I say, I think I'm right at that junction point of development and planning. And so we have to really understand that what is possible. Just to briefly respond to Councillor Edwards' comments, I'm a great listener. I don't know that I have all the answers in terms of issues of equity, but I'm a great listener. I think it's very important to learn and understand. I've worked in many different communities across Boston, in Bowdoin, Geneva, and JP, Forest Hills. I've worked in many different areas, and I want to be able to understand the injury and how to help with healing. So I think that's probably all I can say about that. Thank you, Councilor Wu.
Great, thank you so much. Councilor Bach, questions?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Brian and Drew, for being here with us. I guess my follow-up question, Drew, on your response to Councilor Edwards' question is just, when I think about the zoning amendment that we're working on with the administration to really, put fair housing into the zoning code, I just think about the way in which the zoning code, it has that preamble at the start that talks about kind of considering the public welfare. And I just think about how the understanding of that has shifted over time. So I think there are frameworks that are like, well, light, air, et cetera. And then, there was a big push that obviously took a while to integrate environmental considerations like carbon into the zoning code. And, now we have our green building standard section of the zoning code. And to me, I see, fair housing as another aspect of what we should be considering when we consider the public welfare. And certainly, when it comes to the public health side of things, I think we've seen that all of our communities where people are crowded most densely together, often because of a a lack of access to housing in other areas has been a real exacerbating factor to spread in the pandemic. So but I feel like just in the world of zoning, kind of getting those types of people and like integrated community type considerations onto the docket as part of the like legitimate topic of zoning is still a battle to be won. And in some ways that's ironic because zoning came in across many American cities, often initially as a tool to try to achieve precisely kind of segregation. And so I'm a big believer in, I'm a historian and a big believer in the ways in which zoning can be helpful to us to preserve things we love about our communities, but also very wary of that legacy and thinking a lot about how we overturn it. So I would love to hear your thoughts a little bit on how you would think about the expansion of zoning into more proactively and affirmatively considering fair housing considerations, and perhaps given your work at Stantec, in the analogous case, how you've seen environmental considerations get more integrated into zoning over time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Bach. I think that it is really important for us to learn from the past and bring and start to think about all these things. As you pointed out, health has become a very important factor. And I know I've worked on a number of projects where the health effects have been really key. And how do we plan our projects and how do we modify zoning and can we use form-based codes and things like that to help improve those. Equity may be one too, but I think it's important for us not just to say we know it all, but to listen to the communities and to try to understand what those objectives are, and then see whether we need more zoning regulation through the zoning regulations, or do we need less in some cases? Do we need to have incentives built into them? We've certainly done that in the past for affordable housing. And I'm certainly open to that. I'm not sure I could give you the exact answer. I think we need to start to think about what are those specific issues and then work together to resolve them.
Great, thank you. Yeah, no, and I would say, from where I sit, there's both this very important fair housing zoning amendment that Councilor Edwards has been leading in partnership with the administration and the rest of us on the council, and also, we had a hearing just earlier this week that was co-filed by me and Councilor O'Malley about precisely how we might provide, strategic zoning relief to some of our deeply affordable, 100% affordable projects around the city. Thinking about how you could put some targeted relief on top of the kind of variable zoning restrictions across the city to just make that easier across the board. So I take a very active interest in having a zoning commission that is up for those conversations and is also up for those conversations leading to actual changes in our code.
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Bach. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Councilor Wu, and I just want to first of all say thank you to Brian, who I've worked with for several years as a member of the council, and Brian, you're very professional and hardworking, ethical guy. So we're lucky to have you at the BPDA. So thank you for your work across the city. So I just want to say thank you to Drew also for putting his hat in the ring for this position. And I'm glad you brought up, the impact the environment has on various neighborhoods. I know you live in the Leather District, and I'm proud to represent the Leather District and have great respect for the neighborhood there. So I was wondering, Drew, how do you balance, as a development professional, how do you balance building a project, developing a project, and working with the community on issues that the community may not be in agreement with on the development team, maybe on environmental concerns or maybe on other concerns. I just want to know what your history has been in terms of interacting with the community.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Thanks for representing us in the Leather District and our improved sidewalks on Beach Street.
That's right. Yeah.
So this has been a very important part of my career, and I think when I first came to Boston in 1976, I want to make our city, transform our city, make it more beautiful, etc. And when I first started working on projects, I began to realize, well, I have lots of great ideas, but it's not necessarily the right thing for the community, or I need to understand the community. I'm just going to give you an example of a project I worked on. Goes back a few years now, University Park at MIT. I managed that development project from the beginning for Forest City Development on land that was owned by MIT. And I thought I had a great plan and everything else. What I began to realize right away is that I really needed to listen to the community. We should have a conversation, that they needed to understand, what our needs were from a development perspective, how it worked economically, and how we brought the resources together to make it work. But I needed to listen to them as to what their needs were. That project, eventually we, after not a very long period of time, we put together the city, working with the city, a blue ribbon committee to look at the various issues there. We were able to add affordable housing to the development to make it really work in a better way, and make a few other changes in the plan, so that we got a unanimous vote from that committee itself, with representatives of all sorts of different community groups. And then I think the eventual vote was I think we had all but one vote from the Cambridge City Council in support of a rezoning that everybody could come around, and it was a win-win for everybody. And I've always taken that approach in other development projects, working for DCAM, trying to redevelop Danvers State Hospital. I put it out for developer, for disposition for developers, and meeting the various goals in terms of affordable housing, things like that. We had to get a rezoning through the city, through the town of Danvers, open town meeting. It was a representative town meeting, and we were able to get a 95% vote out of that, because we worked with people. We stopped and we listened to them. So I think those are the important things one needs to do.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you, Drew. And I look forward to supporting Drew when the vote takes place. And just want to say thank you, Drew, for your contributions that you've made to our city as well. So thank you, Drew, and thank you, Brian. Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks, Councilor.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flynn. Is that you? Councilor Edwards.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So thank you, Drew, for acknowledging my questions up front before you spoke. And I do think it's really important for me that while you are a good listener, I think I really want to hear from you a perspective about what zoning can do and what it has done in terms of causing harm, and how you as a zoning commissioner will be looking at things before you as they come up and wondering how they will cause, or how they will create healing, and how they will create a better community, not development, not the building, but truly how they keep the health, the public welfare, our commitment to racial equity in mind. And that's what I want to know, that you will be able to have the perspective to see that.
Thank you, Councilor Edwards. I'm not sure that I can say that I know all of all the incidents of injury and that occur with our current zoning. I want to hear and understand that better from people that have experienced that. What I can say is that often within some communities, we have restricted industrial uses that have noxious effects in certain communities and not in other communities. We need to be very conscious of that, and we need to maybe rezone things so that those are not having the same impact on the communities. But I don't know. I can't at this point say I know every incident of where.
And no one does and could. But I do recommend you read the AFFH task force report.
Okay.
The city of Boston had a affirmatively furthering for housing task force put together. And while the city has not formally accepted their report recommendations, I find them to be incredibly informative and giving a historic perspective. One of the recommendations was changing the zoning perspective, which is what we're going to do this year. I also recommend reading more about and understanding environmental justice and how that is combining the planning and perspective. I think as Councillor Bach talked about with regards to the impact of zoning. I know that for me to really want to support a zoning commissioner, they have to be looking for what's missing in this project. Whose voices aren't there and who will be impacted. And that's important for me because the decisions you make, not just in changing the zoning, but I mean outright, you should be denying things that cause injury. And if you don't even know to look for what the injury is, that is my concern. I need a commissioner that will say no, not maybe some changes. I don't have or haven't seen enough of that leadership in the zoning commission right now. And that is the biggest problem. It's not seeing the injury. It's not seeing beyond the current project as it is in paper before you. It's not even asking the questions. These are permanent decisions that impact people for generations. Redlining, it still impacts us today. The fact that we have highways in communities of color, such as Chinatown, impacts us today with higher asthma rates. So if you're not asking those questions, if you don't even know to ask those questions, then the injuries that could be caused by the current perspective, by developers who, let's be very clear, their job and their mission is not for a better city of Boston. Their job and mission is to develop. Many of them do not even live in the city, nor will they live with the impact of the buildings that they're shoving down our throats. Your job is to be the gatekeeper. Your job is to demand them to be the best that they can be. And your job is to say no when they don't rise to the occasion. And I need for that to be really internalized in you. And I need to hear that from you to get my support, that you will have the strength and fortitude, which I can't say every single zoning commissioner or zoning ZBA member or even the BPD have, to say no. Thank you.
Would you like to respond, Mr. Leff?
I think I do have the fortitude to say no when I think that there's something that's wrong and that's inappropriate. The zoning commission has a very different role from the ZBA, and I haven't begun to serve on the zoning commission that I can tell you that I'm sure that I can tell you all of the roles there, but I certainly can say that I will I will take that into, I will read those, the task force report and environmental zoning justice, and take that, keep that in mind as if I am approved and go forward. I will certainly keep all of that in mind as we have discussions and votes come forward.
Thank you. And just to Councillor Edwards's point, maybe for Brian and for Fernando, just given that Nelson and Jane were not able to be here, but recognizing that the council has taken legislative action in the meantime since their original appointments, and has specifically acted in terms of the affirmatively furthering fair housing proposals and several other relevant pieces. I think whether it's finding a time to have a conversation with them as well, or the possibility of forwarding them some questions to answer in writing, I would love to just do a little more due diligence, so we're not just subjecting Drew here to the only on behalf of everyone. Just make sure we're being fair with all of the nominees for this particular role.
Sure, and for what it's worth, the affirmatively furthering fair housing work that's gone on over the past year has really come a long ways. It's not easy stuff. It's hard stuff. It's can be complex. I anticipate that we're going to, in the coming weeks and months as we move forward with this, have a number of sessions with our zoning commission to sort of bring them up to speed to, where the proposed zoning is now. It's a bit of a steep learning curve for sure, but I think we've sort of collectively, the folks that have worked on this within the administration and Councillor Bach and Councillor Edwards' office, I think collectively we've come a long way. We've learned a lot together, and we want to be able to share that with our commissioners, and certainly any onboarding of new commissioners. We're going to spend a lot of time working on the issues of affirmatively furthering fair housing and the related issues that process brought out.
Thanks, Brian, and Chairwoman. Thank you for the suggestion. We'll definitely do that.
Great, I'll follow up. Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Edwards, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Great. Okay, I think it looks like it's just down to the two of us, so I will ask what I've been asking everyone, which is, could you, Drew, just outline any anticipated conflicts of interest in this role?
Certainly, Councilwoman. So as I mentioned, probably better than half my work is outside of Boston, outside of Massachusetts. For the work that's here, I could conceive. I don't think we've appeared. Any of my clients or myself have appeared in front of the zoning commission. I could conceive that there's one project I'm working on with DCAM in the city of Boston where I would have to recuse myself related to the to a downtown project.
Councillor Wu, I probably am remiss of not interjecting this earlier, but because all of our commission members, whether it's the zoning commission, ZBA, the historic district commission, those folks are all considered special City of Boston employees, and they are subject to the ethics laws of the Commonwealth. And there's an extensive, as you know, I'm sure you've been through it, your staff's been through it. In recent years, I've really stepped up the training programs and the requirement for, recertification in ethics, and we take that very seriously. We work with all of our special city employee board members to make sure that they go through that process, and then there's no question about what the expectation is. So, Drew, you'll have the pleasure and pain of going through that process and taking the tests and so on. There's some things in there that seem very common sense, and there's some other things that you maybe hadn't thought of, and that's why the training is important, because we just can't assume that it comes naturally to everybody. So, no offense, but you're going to be run through that ringer.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I also, just from our council role with some of the work that Councillor Edwards has led on as well, there are still additional conflicts often, and whether it's people serving on multiple boards, regulating things in different ways, or we see, for example, with the ZBA, folks constantly having to recuse themselves. I think it's just good. I'm trying to create the space to at least get that on the record ahead of time. And so more of a sort of disclosure, but I appreciate you're willing to answer that question. Okay, I think that, now it's down to just me. So I think that means we probably come to the end of our questions. Thank you so much, Drew. Thank you, Brian, and to everyone else who has testified today and is willing to step up and volunteer for to serve our city. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. This will conclude our hearing on all of these dockets, and we will look forward to take up some of them at our next city council meeting. Hopefully I'll get the committee reports done in time and then follow up on the rest. Thank you so much. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Councilor.
Good to see everyone. Have a great day.
You too.